Welcome back to Medical Happy Hour, another episode by your favorite host, Gurleen Sidhu. This week's show, we have a very special guest, Dr. Earson, who is an incredible audiologist and will be talking about the auditory system.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so honored to be on the show today. I hope everyone can hear me all right.
Welcome, Doctor. So, Dr. Earson, talk us about the ear and what makes it so unique.
The ear is a special organ that is controlled by the auditory system, which is made up of 3 different parts: the external, the middle, and the internal ear.
Can you tell us more about these parts and how they function?
So the internal ear is the outermost part of the ear and consists of the auricle, the external acoustic meatus tympanic membrane, known as the eardrums. Fun fact, do you know that we have a shell in our ear?
What, really?
Yeah, the auricles are shell-shaped projections outside the ear, which allow the sound to enter into the ear. The internal acoustic meatus is a small canal that extends from the auricle to the eardrums. These canals contain many accessory glands, such as hair follicles and sebaceous glands.
Let me guess, is this where the earwax is formed?
You guessed it right. The sebaceous gland is known as the ceruminous glands. These glands produce a sticky brownish yellow liquid known as earwax, which provides a trap to prevent any insect or foreign pathogens from entering the internal part of the ear.
Okay, that's good to know. How does this connect to the middle ear, though?
Good question. The internal middle ear are mainly involved in hearing only. The middle ear is a small air-filled mucosa-lined cavity that begins laterally by the eardrums of the external ear. The middle ear consists of the 3 small bones in the auditory ossicles, known as malleus, incus, and stapes, from the eardrum into the 3 small bones which get through the oval and round window into the cochlea.
Wow, doctor, I didn't know the ear was this complex.
It doesn't stop there. The internal ear is the complex of them all. It functions in both homeostasis and hearing.
I remember reading about the bony labyrinth. It has 3 regions: the vestibule, the semicircular canals, and the cochlea. Am I correct, doctor?
Someone did the research. The bony labyrinth is a system of tortuous channels swarming through the bones. The membranous labyrinth is a continuous series of sacs and ducts contained within the bony labyrinth. It is also suspended into 2 fluids, the perilymph and the endolymph, which conduct the sound vibrations involved in hearing and respond to the mechanical forces occurring during changes in body position and acceleration.
So tell us more about how the sound wave travels throughout the ear until it's heard from the internal ear.
The sound waves enter into the auricle by getting forced into the external acoustic canal, which travels through the end of the canal and hits the eardrum, causing the sound to vibrate and transfer as sound into the tiny bones of the middle ear. Once the vibration causes the fluid inside the cochlea to ripple, a traveling wave forms along the basilar membrane. Hair cells near the wide end of the snail-shaped cochlea detect higher-pitched sounds. As the hair cells move up and down, the microscopic hair-like projections that perch on top of the hair cells bump against an overlying structure and bind to the core-like channels. When that happens, the chemical rushes into the cells, creating an electrical signal. The auditory nerve carries the electrical signal to the brain, which turns into a sound that we recognize and understand.
Wow, what a quite long journey from the brain to understand and interpret the sound waves from the external environment. One question from the audience is there any helper molecules or signals that actually contribute to the process?
Like every organ system in our body, we need some sort of help for our signals to get through. So we have neurotransmitters, which are molecule signals that are released by neurons so the information can get into the nervous system.
Correct me if I'm wrong, doctor. Neurotransmitters are chemicals that cross a synapse and mediate nervous impulse intermission from one neuron to the next neuron, or from sensory cells to neurons, or neurons to effector cells.
Quite impressive. Neurotransmitters excite or inhibit the neurons to enhance or reduce nerve impulse transmission, but they can also mediate long-term changes in the neurons. All these functions involve interplay of different neurotransmitters to shape the response.
What are the main neurotransmitters that the auditory system relies on?
As in other neural systems in the brain, neurotransmission in the auditory system largely involve in balanced release of excitatory and inhibitory neurotransmitters. Descending excitatory neurotransmission from the cochlea to the cortex rely on the transduced auditory information. Along the way, the information is filtered and refined utilizing inhibitory transmission. Excitatory neurotransmitters is inhibited to inhibitory transmission. Local inhibitory interneurons within the brain structures form a circuit which help to refine the output of the excitatory principal neurons, helping the response to become more effective.
That's so cool how neurotransmitters are involved in the hearing process. Now coming to our last segment, as we know, homeostasis is a main component throughout our body. How does homeostasis work its way through the auditory system?
Homeostasis is found in the internal ear, where it largely involves maintaining ion levels in the hair cells to make sure electrical potential is met in the hair cells to send signals to the brain. There are two processes: endolymph, which consists of high potassium levels, and the stereocilia and perilymph, which consists of high sodium concentrations around the hair cell body. The process takes place when sodium enters the hair cells as part of the transduction process, which is taken back through a series of gap junctions and other transport mechanism, which is secreted back into the endolymph by the stria vascularis, which mediate the potassium transport, while sodium follows electrical chemical gradients and diffusion properties.
So in other words, it's basically how we hear.
Wow.
That's correct.
This intensive process reflects the significant control of ions homeostasis in the ear.
Yes, absolutely. During this podcast, Eric can identify that the auditory system is quite complex. Without the complexity, it would be hard for us to hear.
One quick question, doctor, before we close this episode. What creates hearing loss?
There are many factors related to hearing loss, such as aging, display and tear of the nerve cells in the cochlea that send signals to the brain. When this hair or nerve cells are destroyed, electrical signals are transferred effectively and hearing loss can occur.
There we have it, folks. I would like to thank Dr. Earson for coming on to this week's episode and teaching us about the complex structure and function about the ear and hearing.
Thanks again, everyone. It has been a pleasure being on this podcast.
Join me next week where we'll be talking to Dr. Sniff about the anatomy and physiology of our nose. Thanks again for tuning in to the Medical Happy Hour with your favorite and one and only host, Gurleen Sadu.